Welcome back to the Geographic Profiler. I am Douglas MacGregor, and I have an incredible guest with me today. This is a Surviving the Survivor podcast, and thank you, STS Nation, for tuning in on your favorite audio platforms and on YouTube. You can find more episodes of the Geographic Profiler on YouTube at STS Talk. Today, we are speaking with Peter Faulding. Peter is the founder and CEO of Specialist Group International. He is a confined space rescue and forensic search specialist. Peter is a qualified commercial diver and helicopter fixed-wing pilot, and he has worked cases involving missing persons, homicide, serial murder, accidental death, and more. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell us about yourself, your background, training, and where you're from.
Thanks, Douglas. Thanks for having me on. Well, I grew up in Red Hill in Surrey. Originally, I lived with mum and dad in a block of flats. And my dad worked in the newspaper industry, in the print. He was a stereotyper. So as a young boy, he always sort of got me into adventure, always spent a lot of time outdoors when we could. He was always fixing cars. And then one day he come home and he said, I've got to go up to, I was only 5, and he said, because he was a keen caver in the military as well, when he served with the parachute artillery in the National Service back in '52. And he said, I've got to go up and look at some old mines to my mum. And he said, I'm going to cover the story for the media because they know I'm a caver. So Dad went up there, met a guy called Dennis Mustoe, and you'll see from the pictures, there's him showing his old acetylene lamp, which was an old antique lamp he used to use. And a lot of cavers still use the acetylene lamp. And so he went up there, and he then met this small group. Now, a guy called Dennis Mustoe found the actual mines. He rediscovered them dating back to the 11th century. And Dad said, do you mind if I come along and help you? So every Sunday, Dad would go along. And then after a few weeks, come back and said, I'd like to bring my nipper along with me. Well, how old's he? He said, well, he's 5. And they sort of looked at him. We're 5 years old. He said, no, he'll help us. So I started going down, literally, and you're seeing the pictures from 5 years old, going down these old disused mine workings. And they would tunnel through where the roof had collapsed. They would tunnel through. It might take them 2 or 3 months to every Sunday to dig through this roof collapse. And then often the hole was so tight when they first break in, they would test the air using a candle, and then I would then crawl through and see what was on the other side. It was quite unbelievable. It was something like of Indiana Jones, really. And that's where it all started for me. And without doing that at that early age, I wouldn't be doing what I am today. And then as I got older, every Sunday, and then as I got probably around about 10 o'clock, 10 years old, we used to go up every Wednesday evening as well and dig and tunnel in the old mines. And then over the years, as I sort of got into my late teens, then the mines got up to like 18 miles of disused mine workings where they opened them all out. And we met the fire service up there one day doing the training, fire and rescue. And they said, could you help us out? So I became their scout through the mines because we knew the mines like the back of our hands. But obviously the firefighters would only go down maybe once every 6 months. So we started to train them, and I become the scout along with Dad, and they gave me a pager. And then what happened is scout groups would go down as the mines got big. They would get lost. They would then call me and the local cavers as well. And I would go up and then route the way through the mines to find the lost kids for the fire service. So yeah, it was great. And that got me into, I suppose I used to watch Thunderbirds as a kid. I always wanted to be a rescuer, and that was my childhood. So when I was 16, I left school, and then I started an apprenticeship in mechanical engineering initially, and then I got made redundant after the first year and a half, due to the recession at the time. And then my training officer got me a job with the Civil Aviation Authority at Gatwick, where I trained in the radar engineering department, and I worked on radar engineering, and went to the industrial training centre, and then was in there until I was about 22. So I served my 6-year time, my apprenticeship. So I am an engineer, radar engineer by trade. At school, I run for the cross country team when I was at school as well, which I was into sport. I wasn't into the academic stuff. I was more into physics. I was into metalwork, and I was into anything sporting. I was good at, but I wasn't particularly good at English and things at the time. I wasn't really interested. So then when I was 18, my dad was ex-military, and I always wanted to join the military. And I went past this building, like a bit like you call the National Guard in America, the Reserve Parachute Regiment. So I went in there, and then when I was 18, running alongside my job, I joined the Parachute Regiment Reserve, and I served 6 years. I done the selection for the Parachute Regiment. We had 184 start, and 28 of us finished the course. It was a really tough course for obviously airborne forces. And then I got my military parachute wings as well after that. And I spent 6 years in there. So I had a great time, still in touch with all my comrades at the time. And it was a really good grounding for me, discipline. I was in the cadets when I was a kid, but it was great discipline. It was great skills that I learned in there as well. And then I went on from there, but I always wanted to do this. I left my job in radar engineering after when I was 22, because I wanted to do this rescue stuff. And eventually I got a couple of sales jobs, and then I eventually managed to set up on my own in my late 20s, early 30s. And I was asked to do articles, started doing articles, because my contacts in the fire service put me in contact with London Fire Brigade. And then London Fire Brigade would come down to Surrey for me to train them down the mines in confined space and collapsed structure, where I lectured at their training school at Southwark. And then I got involved with the oil refineries, got involved with the London Air Ambulance, HEMS, where I trained all the doctors to work underground as well. So it was for me, a really interesting time. And I started to build all these contacts in the background. And then in 1991, we got hit by a hard recession. I lost my house. I had 2 little girls at the time in the recession. We had a house, what they call repossessed over here, probably. And I didn't have a lot of money, but I was determined to actually get on, and I wasn't going to give up setting this rescue business up. And then came an odd call one day. In England, we had a lot of environmental roads protesters. It's slightly different over here. Where roads are being built, there was a lot of antis against these new road developments in the UK with the government, and they would move onto the site where the proposed road was, and they would dig tunnels. Now, I wasn't really focused too much on that. I saw a bit in the news, but I was out trying to earn money. And then I got a call one day. My wife was at home, and we were working from a flat, and I called myself Specialist Rescue International at the time. It was quite funny. There was just me in this flat and my wife, and she's answered the phone, holding the hand over the phone. She said, "I've got a chap called Mervyn Edwards on the phone from Thames Valley Police." "Oh, right, okay." And he's picked the phone up. He said, "We need to see you urgently in Newbury. We've got a problem with protesters, and I understand you're the man who can help us out in tunneling expertise." So anyway, he said, "The meeting's tomorrow and I need to see you here." So I had to cancel everything. And I had a hole in my shoe because I didn't have any money. My shoes were spotlessly polished, but I had a hole in the bottom. So I put a bit of old cardboard in the thing to stop my foot touching the ground. And I pressed on my suit, I say military background really. And I was immaculate. I drove over there, and I met all these high power people. I mean, the Treasury solicitors, the assistant chief constables, the law, or the undersheriff, and they said, "We got a problem, and we think you could solve it, and we need you to go down these tunnels and drag these people out of the tunnels." And I thought, oh dear, okay, well, I can probably help doing the tunnels. I don't know about dragging them all out. I don't. Anyway, I got the contract for this, dealing with the first anti-roads protest in the UK at Newbury Bypass in 1996. It was amazing. They dug networks of tunnels, and down the tunnel we found the Tunnels of Coo book. It was incredible, and they literally didn't know who was going to get them out. Was it the police? Whether it was bailiffs? Nobody else could do it. So I went along with Dad, and we took a medic with us, and I got the first job out the way. And I remember working sort of 18 hours that day, and we got there that night. And I said to Dad, "We can't put a bill in for petrol or a hotel because it'll put our bill over the top." And it was only £3,000 or something. It was nothing, and I was saving the whole job. Now you'll see in this picture, this is another me being hung down a shaft. But I think this is, they were so tight tunnels, they were so dangerous, and you needed tunneling expertise, you needed guts to go down there, and also not worried about conflict with them, because there was likely to be maybe fisticuffs with them down the tunnel, not something that we wanted. So I went, the police were at the top. They waited for the guy to come out and urinate in the bushes to have a pee, and they grabbed him. They were all in camouflage and pulled him out. And then I was sent down like a tunnel rat to search the tunnels for protesters. Anyway, we got that one out of the way. We did that. And we then went on to a place called Honiton Bypass, where there's a infamous road protester by the name of Swampy. And Swampy made his name if anyone Googles Swampy, you'll see him come up. I mean, it's incredible. He dug a massive network of tunnels with his colleagues. So then I got the contract to move on and dig them out. And then in a few months, then I went up to see Muppet Dave and his protesters at Manchester Airport. And this picture is me and Muppet Dave. He spent 21 days underground. There was 11 tunnels with about 80 protesters underground dug in at the proposed site of the Manchester second runway. So this is what happened in the early 90s, and it got really, it was sort of 1990, sorry, late 90s, 1997, right the way through to 2001. We had mass protest at all these different locations. They were protesting against all the roads, runways, and obviously we done the job, so we got the job to go and dig them out. So it was, for me, financially, it was obviously very rewarding. It was very, very dangerous work, but it was fun work. And as you can see, you know, from the pictures, you sort of build a rapport with these people. And I only got bit once, so I got punched once, but in my whole career, that's not bad. And the way I found was to give them a coffee, have a chat with them, and be nice. You know, at the end of the day, just be normal. There's no need for any violence or aggression. So when I got to them behind the door, like the picture you'd see, the Swampy behind the door, we'd shake hands. I'd get him a coffee before we let him out of the tunnel. But these tunnels are so confined, and you can see from the pictures, people crawling out, but we couldn't go down them unless we shored them up. So we would have to dig them out to about a metre. Something I used to teach the fire brigade in the early days. I'd dig them all out and then reshore it with timbers. A lot of hard work and a team effort working with I had a team of about 12 working, and we would do about 12 hours a day underground, and we'd have to have the night off because it was too much hard work. And some of the contracts, I mean, one of them, the A130 in Essex, took us 6 weeks to dig them out. Yeah, Manchester Airport was a month, but that was 11 tunnels and about 80 protesters underground. And then I become the sort of national lead on protest in the UK, and I was invited into the police colleges and to present on this specialism because it was so a unique skill to have, and they really put their lives in danger And you can see from the diagrams, where they take over a house, they'd dig under the floors, and something I've not seen happen anywhere else in the world where they've gone to this extent. Environmental protesters, we get Just Stop Oil, we get people like that, but not to this extent where they're holding up roads or holding up runways. So it was an interesting time for me. And then I got asked to sit on the Home Office working group for environmental protest, where as an advisor to the government, which I did. And again, obviously made many, many more contacts. And then we got involved in the nuclear industry, and we started our own maritime section. So we were dealing with protest at sea as well. So we got boats, and I had obviously a highly skilled team. So we would spend a lot of time on the water as well, preventing this type of protest against nuclear ships and other type of shipping. A lot of that was obviously confidential work we did. So yeah, it was a really, really interesting time. No regrets, and from that we invested in a huge amount of specialist equipment at the time to carry on.
So I had been following you in the media and on social media, and I was just engrossed in your activities and so interested in your activities and what you did, because it's so much different from the North American search and rescue landscape, if you will. And when I read your book, I have the audio book version, so you can get it on obviously printed or on audiobook. And when I listened to your book, I had no idea that protester world existed, where they dug themselves in these tunnels, barricaded them in, set booby traps, and that people had to go in and get these people out. I'm not sure if you get fear or if fear keeps you alive, but how do you confront that and with something when you don't know what's down there and you don't know what to expect?
I suppose, Doug, it's excitement. There's not so much fear. I mean, I grew up in tunnels. I grew up in confined spaces, and I went on to train the oil refineries in rescue and confined space rescue. So for me, there was no fear of being in the tunnel. There was always a worry that the tunnel would cave in, but we would shore it appropriately to stop it. We'd prop it up, put our own props in. And I wasn't fear of the protesters. I thought that was an airborne forces military thing where you can look after yourself, and I wasn't worried about these people attacking me, because I could probably deal with it if I needed to. But I went down there not to face aggression. I went down there as the person who was going to solve the problem for the authorities, but also be the friendly face to the protesters, where they could sit and have a coffee. We could give them a coffee behind their barricades, and when they came out, we could shake hands, and they would both congratulate each other on a good job. It was very strange, and we'd give them a cake and things like that, because they could be down there for a long time, and there's no good having aggression between them. It's a bit like I suppose the poor guys who went to the Vietnam War when they were down the tunnels of Cu Chi, they were facing live booby traps where they're going to get blown up or shot. Probably the most I was going to get was either a tunnel collapse or a punch in the face, but I could probably deal with that. But lucky enough, I said, in all the times that we worked in the tunnels, and also I should say in trees and on power stations and on oil rigs, it's not just underground. We've since 1997, we've not had one accident or incident or serious injury to either side in all that time, through taking great care, and we've maintained 100% safety record. So it's a slow thing, but you've got to train for it, and that's what we do all the time.
And how do you ensure that 100% success rate? I mean, you must have to know exactly how many protesters are underground, and they must account for each other to ensure that everybody gets out. How do you account for that?
Well, we work with we obviously work with the police and agencies, so we generally know when he's on camp. But the point is, when we're working these tunnels, it was our job once the last person is out, because of what they're going to do then is put a big JCB through the roof and collapse the tunnels. We have to search every part of that tunnel to make sure there's no hidden chambers where a protester is hidden in a chamber. They cave the tunnel in. He doesn't know what's going on upstairs, as they call it, on the ground. And now they scream, "You've just buried one of our protesters' friends alive." And you can imagine the headlines, it would be major news.
Mhm.
So we've got to go through every part of that tunnel with a probe just to make sure there's no hidden shafts in the floor like Swampy had. There's no hidden doorways behind mud walls, behind the shoring panels. There's a lot of work involved. And also we have to pump air down the tunnel to keep the oxygen levels above 20%. Oxygen, to make sure there's no carbon dioxide build up. We've got to give them communications. We've got to make sure their welfare's okay. So there's a heart, not only hearts and minds, but it's a big, the duty of care is down to me ultimately when we walk onto that site, and that's why we're important to build a good rapport with protest groups.
One thing I really love about SGI and about how you have created this business and privatized search and rescue is that, I mean, that's really hard to do. So one hurdle that I have found I'm in Canada, but I work most of my cases in the United States, is that I didn't go the law enforcement route. And for me, that was at the time, it was a medical decision. I could not go into law enforcement. So I went the consulting route, and it's obviously, it's a lot more work involved. It's a tougher go because you got to break into that community. How did you, why did you decide not to go, say, the law enforcement, fire, military search and rescue route? And two, how did you really manage to break into those communities?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Doug. So I wanted to go in the military in the full-time parachute regiment, but my dad wouldn't sign the papers for me. He didn't want me going into the military, and it's probably a good thing. He wanted me to get a trade, but I joined the sort of what we call the reserve army over here, like the US National Guard. So I did it that route, and I said I spent 6 years in there. I had a great time, done 42 parachute jumps, and I had a great time in there. I suppose once I got involved working alongside the emergency services, once I then started to become once I got involved in the protest world, then I made lots of contacts, but they were contacting me and said, "We need you to speak at the police college." It was Bramshill Police College as it was then. "We want you to lecture on the policing of environmental protest course." And my name was just going around everywhere. And then I say on the Home Office working group. So I become a key advisor to them. And I was just driven by events. I never chased it. I never cold called. I never wrote to people. They would come to me, and I was driven by events and success, I suppose, because the way we dealt with these protest groups, and I think a lot can be learned from that. Type of thing. But then I broke in, obviously, later on into the sort of crime search side as well, which I can come on to.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that. I've become, in the last year or so, I've started working more and more with search and rescue groups here in North America, specifically the US. And as you're probably aware, there are, in some of the larger agencies, fire, military, there are some search and rescue agencies within those groups, but a lot of the search and rescue landscape within the United States are these volunteer organizations. And they're dedicated, they're professional, they're very good at what they do. They're obviously not full-time. They do it on the weekends, they train, and they're ready. And most of their activities are ground searches for lost people in the wilderness, that kind of thing. And one thing that myself and some people I work with are trying to do is we're training some of them on that evidence and human remains searches, and they're starting to get into that, and they're starting to work with law enforcement getting into that. Do you also, with your group, do those traditional ground searches that search and rescue do, and then from there, what how did you also get into the forensic search side of it?
Yeah. So again, what I work a lot with the volunteer search and rescue groups. They're absolutely brilliant, and like you said, they're dedicated. I could never say a bad word against them, and particularly our area. We've got Sussex Search and Rescue. We've got Kent Search and they called Lowland Rescue. They all wear uniform. They go on training sessions. They're absolutely fantastic, girls and guys, and they're absolutely dedicated. Now, without these, and also I mentioned mountain rescue, cave rescue, without cave rescue, mountain rescue, lowland rescue, the police in the UK would be absolutely stuck, because these people are doing, the police resources in the UK has scaled back so much now. So there's about, I think it's 9 or 10 underwater search units cover the whole of the United Kingdom, which is nothing. So they've cut back, the budgets have gone, forensic budget's been cut down. And what happens when someone goes missing at 3 o'clock in the morning, typically a dementia patient or something like that, or a child, it's lowland rescue who get called out straight away. As you say, they don't get paid. They are volunteers. They do a day job, so they may have been at work all day long, the same as cave rescue, mountain rescue. They've been out of work all day long. Now, 10 o'clock, their pager goes off. They're now out looking for a missing and vulnerable person. And I can't say what a fantastic bunch they are. In England, they don't do subsurface, so they're not divers, because in the UK, to be a diver, you've got to be a commercial diver. You cannot be a sport diver and work for the police or do that type of operation. You've got to be a professional diver. So sort of 8-week course to become that type of work. Now, that's part of Lowland. So how did I get in? Well, when I sat on the Home Office working group, they said to me, look at maritime protest, etc. That's what we did. And then I started getting interested in, I was already a sport diver, and I was fascinated how we could find people in water, because in the UK, I looked at it because I was working around a lot of ships for protest work, and I saw them doing diving. I thought, well, how can they find someone in somewhere like a large reservoir? How are they doing it abroad? Now, obviously, it was early days of the internet and everything else, so there wasn't all this, like we got podcasts, we got Twitter, we got everything now, articles. It was very vague. And I started looking at how can we find people. So I started researching sonar, and I went to a US company, Marine Sonic Technology, and I brought back, got side scan sonar in. Which is probably one of the best products around. That's what we bought. The kit we need now is about £53,000. But also we use a company called JW Fishers, again, American. And our metal detectors and our magnetometers are from JW Fishers. So great pieces of equipment and really good for searching reservoirs. So what it's given us the ability, what I did, I brought that back. And then I conducted like 3 years of trials. So we would go over to the reservoir at Weirwood or Ardingly. We got an old skeleton. We had Skelly the skeleton, and we dress him in a pair of overalls, and we'd tie rope around his leg, and we'd throw him over the side of the boat. And it just makes me wonder if someone locally saw us throwing this skeleton in the water, what they would think. But anyway, we threw it with social media now. You can imagine it all over it. But we threw him in. And then we knew exactly where he was on the surface. So that was the key. And what we wanted to do, I wanted to get the imagery of what a skeleton dressed in a pair of overalls to simulate a decomposed body would look like. So through my police contacts, I then started working with he was then the National Search Advisor for the UK Police. So he was a single, he would tasked nationally to work on major missing person searches. So he was the national search advisor rather than regional. And then Mark, now he's MBE, Professor Mark Harrison, he went off to the Australian Police Force. I worked with Mark for many years. And Mark started to bring me into drownings. And then I started to get involved with ground radar. as well. How can we locate? So we know how the first one I got, funny enough, before the sun, I got on a remote operated vehicle that we were using. So that was, I realized how limited the ROV was. It's good for under a ship. It's good for looking for drugs and things, but you don't know where it is underwater, a small one. So you could send it out on a lake and it could miss a body by 3 feet, whereas a side scan sonar send a signal out and create literally see the body laying there with the arms or legs or head or whatever. So we would put people and divers in different positions on the bottom. We'd put boxes in, and I could find a woman's handbag on the bottom eventually, and we fine-tuned it, and I got busier and busier and busier. And then Smart started bringing me in on the using ground penetrating radar as well to some big cases, and I had great success in finding buried drugs and weapons and human remains. So I was early days. I was put on the national operations faculty expert database, which then eventually ended up as the National Crime Agency. This was in about 2001. So I was on it a long time, and I was on their expert database. But I would get called into by the regional advisors to many cases, and a lot of them we would solve, So I became the sort of national lead on side the sonar search and specialist search. And then I started to present at the National Search Centre, which is in them days, was at Chattenden in Kent. And Chattenden was it was run by Lieutenant Colonel Garth Whitty, who was the chief instructor down there. They call it the chief instructor. And then it went to Lieutenant Colonel Bob Tompkins. But they were down there, and I met many of the military guys, and I'd be brought in to present on their courses on various bits and pieces we were using. Then I worked with the Home Office, the Police Scientific Development Branch. They were then looking at how they could assist police forces as well. So over the years, I built so many contacts, got involved with so many jobs. And that's when when I was at the National Search Centre. And like I said, we've been involved in so many high profile cases like COP26. So we were involved in the specialist work. I can't go into the details of it, but it was public that they knew we were up there, but we were working alongside the US Secret Service and everybody when we were, and the British police and government when we were up at COP26. So we get involved in some unique operations that are highly confidential over the years. But I don't write about this sort of stuff because that I'd be breaching confidentiality, and that's not what I'm about. But we've been involved in some big stuff, and it puts us at the top of the tree, really.
To break into all these different organizations and agencies is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And I know you do, and I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. You still do some pro bono work for families.
Yeah.
Do you also does SGI have international clients? Have you done jobs internationally outside the UK?
We've done certain work, but I can't go into that particular work. But the general, I've done the stuff around protest and everything as well overseas. But a lot of the work we can't discuss because, say, we do maritime work and all sorts. But with regard to the families, yeah, we still do some pro bono work for families, and when they approach us, some of the time you're not available. But again, we have to be careful now after certain cases of bad publicity as well that can bring it toward bad publicity towards us. So we're very cautious in what we get involved with now and how we comment. In a certain case, I know we're going to talk about that. In England, we hear all the national media and now every word I say can get wrongly interpreted. As I just need to be very careful how I say things, because with social media now it can give you a bad reputation overnight, very easily. So we're very careful what we get involved with.
Right.
every meet, whenever there's a boat, when the boat sank in the recent yacht sank out in the Mediterranean, and then people were trapped underneath in the water, the Thai cave rescue, I was commenting on that on Sky News and how they would bring them out through my background. But then I was advising the family of the sunken vessel behind the scenes, but it didn't go public because I said to them, I don't want the media to know that I'm discussing this with you. I just don't want any coverage at all, because it can just go the wrong way. And no, I've got nothing against the media, but it's just I have to be careful how I say things, and I don't want everybody putting in the media that I'm involved in a case. It doesn't work well for me.
I've been in the same boat where I've been contacted regarding cases, and same thing. I kind of, I will discuss it unofficially off the record, but under confidentiality.
That's
If
right.
Exactly. Before we get into some of the water safety
Yeah.
and initiatives you have going, and then from there, eventually we'll get into some case discussions, which are fascinating. I wanted to ask you, and this was a particular interest of mine when I was reading your book, because my background, my initial academic background, I did a master's of science in defense and strategic studies through Missouri State University in the U.S. And then after that, I did a master's certificate in counterterrorism strategies. So one of the stories in your book is you got a call about a counterterrorism operation.
Yeah.
Do you mind expanding on that a bit?
Yeah, well, that was interesting. So at the time, we were training what they call Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, as it was then. It was it was the obviously Customs Excise, which is now Joint Border Force, and there was a ship coming in called the MV Nisha off the Isle of Wight, and there was intelligence coming that it was carrying nuclear, biological, chemical weapons into the UK waters. So special forces raided it. It all hit the headlines that morning early. They went in by helicopter, special boat squadron, and they went on board and they seized the ship. And then the problem was, how are we going to search the ship? Now, at the time, the Customs Excise didn't have what they call rummage teams now, and we'd just done some training for them. And I got a call from the Met Police, and that my pager went off, and I got a call from the Met. And while I was there, I was talking to the guys and said, we've both come up with one name who can search the four-peat tank of the ship, and it can be you, and we need the hold searching and my team. There was no one else available who would do it, who were trained in what they call WICs, or working in confined spaces at the time, because it was the thing that the military done later. So we got rushed down to Southampton, met up with various agencies down there, and we were all getting prepared to obviously go on this ship. And we were down there for, I think, 2 days. And then on Christmas Eve, literally Christmas Eve, suddenly it said, all stop. And nothing happened. And everyone was together waiting to go on the ship. And that was the sort of work we got involved with. I mean, my pager's always on. We never know what we're going to get called to. That's the thing. We never know. We could be helping anybody, and a lot of the stuff we get involved with always remains confidential. People don't know where we are, which is a good thing. All our trucks aren't marked trucks. We have plain trucks, and we don't always wear our SGI uniforms. A lot of the time, we might wear just a plain work rig. Nobody knows that we're there, which is a good thing. And it works well with some of the people we work with.
So how many employees or how many staff do you have working with SGI, and do they go through, what kind of training do they go through?
Well, different parts of the company, we've got a total staff of 54. So the training we do on our protest rescue boats. So we're diving every 2 weeks. So the team are in the water diving, as you can see in them pictures. So the team are working on ropes an awful lot, where they're doing rope training. They're using the firehouse, the fire service, fire and rescue premises as well. We got our own training rigs at work at our base. and the trick is it's constant training. So it's one discipline, one day, confined space, it's ropes. And then in the water diving, it's using sonar, and they have a rotational, if we're not, because we're on call, if we're not actively out working, then there'll be training, and it's in the training diary, and they keep very tight training logs. And also in this time, we got to maintain all our equipment as well, so it's not just using that equipment. So if we're out for the day diving, that equipment's got to come back in, it's got to be washed, it's got to be serviced, it's got to be dried, it's got to hang up overnight, to dry in the warm environment before we restow it on the trucks ready to go. But it's all, and the cylinders recharged, but it's always got to be ready to go. And also fitness as well. So the team keep a very high standard of fitness as well. So that's another event. And obviously we are busy all the time. And then we've got a security side of the business that does not in the public eye. So again, we've got different parts where we work on events and things as well.
Right. So you have different units. You have a marine unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got boats who do regular patrol. So we got a maritime side. We've got the divers, but some of the rope guys are divers as well. So again, they can cross. And then we have a 24/7 control room where we got CCTV operation as well, and it works 24 hours. So if the emergency services contact us, then it goes through our control room at work, and then the messages will be sent out to mobilize the team during the out of hours when they're not in. That includes obviously Christmas Day and every other time.
I mean, you're an emergency service.
Yes, we are. Yeah. We're the only private company to carry blue lights in the UK and warning systems. So again, all the team are trained. We're trained response drivers, and we were trained by the emergency services, and we've all got tickets that we are licensed and insured to drive on blue lights 20 mile an hour above the speed limit. And we when we need them, we use them, but when we don't, obviously we don't need them. So it's not all the time like a police car, but sometimes you could get a person drowned, there could be a boat sinking, and you need to be there as quick as possible to potentially save that life. If someone's like a car's gone in a river, there could be a child trapped in a car or something like that. Or as a couple of times we've had a sunken canal boat in the canal, and they wanted us there straight away because someone could be trapped in an air pocket or a structure or whatever.
The next thing I want to touch on was the flood work that that you do, because obviously you're not just doing criminal investigations and body recovery, but you're doing humanitarian work as well as part of your activities. And a lot of this is really big here right now. I mean, in the United States, you had the hurricanes Milton and Helene, there was flooding in many states, and you just had the fires in Los Angeles. So humanitarian work is such a central focus. So what do you do for the flood work? How involved are you there?
Well, we won a contract a few years ago, which was the first ever awarded contract to a private company in the UK to assist fire and rescue with confined space rescue from height, floods, and to assist in other ways. And in 2014, sadly, my dad passed away that year. We had the horrendous floods at Christmas around the Surrey area, and these poor people were flooded out of their homes. I mean, no barrier would have prevented this. I mean, there was lots of talk about people coming on at the time saying, "Oh, if we had these flood barriers here, it would have stopped it." The water was coming from every direction, and whatever barriers you had, you wouldn't have stopped it. They were putting barriers up, and it was going around the barriers. The Thames were flooded there because the rivers were just rising. There was so much water, and people were just washed out of their homes. I mean, you see old ladies, and but what a lot of people don't realize is when floods happen, it's not just about the water getting to the home. The electric's cut off, so you've got no electric now. Now for heating, you got no heating because your electric has gone. Your electric pump that runs the heating to pump the water around the system has gone. You got no telephone. You got no internet. You got nothing. So you're completely isolated. And if you're an elderly person, a pensioner living on your own, and the water makes the house really cold. I remember going to one gentleman one evening. We went into his house, and he was up the stairs, and he just had a double hip operation, and this was Christmas Eve in 2013, December 2013. And I said, "Sir, how are you okay?" He said, "I've just had a hip operation." He said, "I can't get downstairs to get my drugs," and he said, "I'm completely flooded out. I'm freezing cold." And I said, "Right, we'll get you to the refuge centre, which has been set up by the council." So we rang the Surrey Fire and Rescue. We rang the controllers, who were doing a great job, the ladies. And I said, "Could you give us the contact details for the the welfare centres?" No, they've closed them over Christmas. You couldn't make this up. They had actually closed the centres because they didn't have the staff to work them over Christmas. So this poor man now is stuck in his house. So what we did was said, "Where do your family live?" So I got a couple of my guys to drive him down to Kent, 80, 90 miles to his family in Kent, because he probably would have perished. It was horrendous. There was water everywhere. So yeah, we worked on that in for 3-4 days, absolutely 24 hours a day. And then but in March, February, it happened again. We had floods in a different part of the county, and the water was just coming from everywhere. And lucky we've got boats, we had the personnel, but it wasn't about us. It was about everybody: the police, the fire service, the paramedics. We had paramedics, and there was a funny story. There was this rather large gentleman. What was he? Well, bariatric patient in a house, and we went to in Staines, and we went through this house estate. We had paramedics with us, and we went into his front door, and it was completely flooded, the hallway, and he was sitting on the sofa. And I said to him, "Are you okay?" And I said, "We've got a boat outside." And in very colourful language, he said, "You would need an effing aircraft carrier to move me, son." And this man was huge. Anyway, we got him out, and my team carried him out with 5 of them and got him into a boat. So there's always a bit of humour there. And we got him away and got him to a centre where he could be looked after. But everyone working, I must stress, it's like on any search operation, it's not about us, it's not about me, it's about a team. It's a huge team involved in all this type of work that we're working with alongside other hard-working emergency services.
I don't think a lot of people realize the amount of work, the danger that goes into, performing these operations. And my experience with floods is only on the cleanup side. The main river that runs through Ottawa River, it every now and then, every few years, it'll flood, and I've gone down to help with sandbag removal.
Yeah.
But just even after the water's gone, you have the stagnant water, the smell of dead fish and everything else. It's just it's something else. So
yeah, the money's huge that the councils have to put into this afterwards. And often I hear, sadly, the criticism of the emergency services and everybody else, but the people write this criticism aren't there at 3 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold, up to their necks in water, trying to deal with this type of operation. They're not there. It's very easy to sit and be a keyboard warrior and sit there and criticize other people. And that's one of the things I learned over the last couple of years from from a case we're going to talk about.
And it's so critical to have that assistance available. I know for the floods in Florida and North and South Carolina and Georgia that the US just went through, Canada sent down hydro workers, forestry, Red Cross, Salvation Army, all these people just to help out with these efforts.
And like you said, the Red Cross and the Salvation Army, they're providing welfare, volunteers coming out helping and feeding the troops on the ground, because when you're working up to your necks in water, somebody needs to feed. You haven't got time to stop because you're going from one incident to the other, and it's just nice to go and get a hot coffee, so just to warm you up, and then you can go on to the next. And you'll see these, we were working literally around the clock, and 4 of my team got bravery awards for rescuing a gentleman in a flood in a place called Brockham Bridge.
It looks like very dangerous
That's
work.
it. That's the actual
That's
one.
the one.
That's the one where they recovered they got them out the sunroof in that car. There's a car there, and
Wow.
he foolishly drove across the bridge, and had a problem, and they had to be rescued. The car literally within a few minutes of that washed away down the river.
Because I bet at that point you wouldn't be able to open those doors anymore, or it'd be very hard.
You would
You'd break the glass, or
they were actually got on the roof, so that's where they were rescued from. But again, without that, the team being there to get that, we had the boat available, and then that's me, with me flying the helicopter over the floods, because I had the military photographer with us. So for the first day, I was up in the helicopter assessing the area for the fire and rescue, because the police helicopter was on other operations. And that was parked at police headquarters, my helicopter. And then there's another one of a couple being rescued from a house. I mean, it was just lucky I had my camera with me to take some pictures on the phone, because people would never believe you. And that's what I've always tried to do on jobs, because half of the stuff we do, people would never believe what you do. They think, oh, he's making that up. But it's not. I've got the pictures and everything to to tell the story, really.
Before we get into some of the case discussions, do you want to touch on the water safety work that you do and the campaign that you have?
Love to, yeah. I mean, my water safety campaign's all about a little lad, Lucas Dobson, who sadly lost his life, a 6-year-old. He was going fishing with his father, and he was walking down to the boat by the River Stour. Now, they had life jackets on the boat. I want to make this very clear. So very responsible parents, and they had life jackets on the boat. So Lucas went ahead. He stepped on the boat and stepped across onto the next boat, and the boat moved, and he fell down between the boats, and he got washed away in the current. And the emergency response was huge. We got called down the following day, and there was firefighters, there's Coast Guard, there's everybody, search and rescue organisation, Kent Search and Rescue, Surrey, so I was brought in from all round, volunteers, Salvation Army to feed. What people don't forget, obviously the Salvation Army are there to provide welfare as well. They were there, and we searched for 4 days. Now, Lucas's body, strangely, was spotted by a police officer in the water. We believe he'd been lodged in the reeds, and the current was so strong in the river. There was a dead sheep in the river, and it would go up and down the river every day, and it would wash in, it would wash out. And my team went up from the instruction of the police. Then we searched, no one could find him. It was a horrible river, and then my team recovered Lucas's body. Very sad occasion, and then we decided. I thought, let me contact the parents, because I'd been building a rapport up. We should do something now about water safety. And I got together his dad, and I said, look, why don't the money you've raised, why don't you put some life buoys along the river, and maybe we could start some sort of life jacket campaign. So I went to got his agreement, went to Baltic Life Jackets in Sweden and UK. They agreed to print his little face on each life jacket, and I fortunate enough to own my own helicopter and fly and pilot it. So what I started to do was deliver the life jackets to schools, 8 or 10 life jackets, and then do a water safety talk. Now, the first drop was actually at Lucas's school. So that was his friends at the school and his mum, with his dad there, and friends, very close family members, and that was the first school we delivered to. And then I kept the campaign going because it's too upsetting for Nathan, the father. So I now keep that campaign going. I now fund it. So once the money run out for all the life jackets, we delivered well over 1,000. I now continue it each year, and I fund the life jackets privately through my business, and I pay for my own helicopter fuel. I always did, and I deliver them to pre-arranged schools all around the country. To deliver and do a water safety talk as well, and it's really important. And I want to this year try and get it into the national curriculum at school, so water safety becomes part of the national curriculum at school. And I've started this campaign in 2019 when Lucas sadly drowned, and I still remain in close contact with his dad. I mean, on average, my team over the years, we recover about 10 drowning victims each year for the police. 2016, we recovered 16 drowning victims in 8 weeks in a very hot summer. So I'm seeing that all the time, and it's hard hitting. So this is what I've done to give back, and now I can pass that on, that water safety knowledge, and give them the life jackets. And the idea is that the children can then take the life jackets and book them out like library books if they're going near water at the weekend, like mum and dad have got a paddle board or something like that. So it's working, but I'm one man doing this, so it's not. I can't cover thousands of schools, but I'm probably doing about 15 schools every summer, and I go in, and that's in my own time and my own money.
That's a great initiative, and
Yeah.
I love that you're doing it. I think it's amazing, and it's so important too. Just the learning about water safety. I mean, we have water safety. Obviously, there's laws and regulations. You have to have so and so in a boat, and you have to wear this and this if you're in such and such a boat.
Yeah.
But in terms of the education side of it, it's just you don't see it in schools unless a school has the initiative to bring somebody in. And so, kids just aren't getting that water safety education on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Same in here. It's not in the national curriculum. We're focusing on other things rather than water safety. And it's so important. We've got so much water around, and people go to the beach, and most of the drownings we deal with are 17-year-olds, and they're swimming, showing off in front of girls, which we all did, but jumping in lakes and rivers, swimming out, and they get exhausted, and the cold water shock affects them. So it's, lots of people trying to do different campaigns, and it just needs one stick, one campaign to go, right, yes, we're finally going to do something about this, because everyone's been trying for years, but I think governments don't take much notice. But we just need to get it into the national curriculum at the school would be useful. Okay, so on the life jacket campaign, then I was recognised by the Lord Lieutenant of Surrey for my work for charity, which was great. So I got presented with the award by one of the deputy lieutenants, and it was a really proud moment. I wasn't expecting it, but it's just nice to be recognised, and that sits proudly on my wall, which is fantastic, really. So that's the helicopter, and that's what I fly around in. Because I have a UK and US pilot's license for both fixed wing and I fly an R44 Raven 2, but I've also got an advanced fixed wing license. So I fly a Cirrus SR22 Turbo. What I learned to fly, I don't own one. I fly one when I go to the US, but I have my own R44 Raven 2 pictured. Which I fly to around the country for my work.
And each of those must have taken some considerable hours to get your license to.
Yeah, it took a lot of work. I mean, a lot of study, as you know. There's exams, and I done it 2 routes. So I learned started learning to fly in the Air Cadets when I was a child. I was in the Air Cadets. I then went to try and get my license fixed wing when I was in early 20s, but I ran out of money. And I used to fly on the air ambulance a lot in London because I was fortunate enough to teach them in confined spaces. And in quid pro quo there, they would give me time out once every few weeks with them on the helicopter with the doctors, where I watch these amazing people work, and I trained them in confined spaces and collapse structure work, which was fantastic. So I always wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I always wanted to fly, and I was fortunate enough one day just to go, right, I'm going to do this. And I studied, and I just done intensive lessons, and learned to fly. And now I fly myself around in the sky. It's a weird feeling to be able to fly like a bird across the sky. But it's rewarding. And if anyone listening has got children, I never left school with degrees or exams. You just need to pass the pilot exams. That's what people don't realize. You don't need a degree to be a pilot. You just need to be able to pass the exams and the study, and obviously all the flight tests. So don't get me wrong, it's not easy, but it can be done if you're a determined individual. And again, flying an aeroplane is totally different than flying a helicopter. But yeah, and lucky enough, I went to the US and I studied out there as well for fixed wing and helicopter. I'd done some advanced flying on helicopter out in the US. I'd done some mountain flying in Arizona as well.
Do you keep your helicopter? Do you have a pad at your home, or do you keep it at an airport somewhere?
No, I keep it at home. I live on a 140-acre farm in Sussex, so I got land, and I've got a large hangar here, so it's kept in the hangar with other equipment as well. And I've got my own fuel bowser, so I can fuel it up here. And I've got a concrete pad. Well, that's my home there, where I'm getting the award. So that's where my helipad. I would call it helipad, but a big patch of concrete. Where I fly from, and I've got a windsock and everything. So yeah, I fly from there, and I use it on business. So if I've got to go to Manchester or wherever, if the weather's good, I will fly, because it saves me an awful lot of time getting around the country.
And it saves a lot of time just being able to leave immediately, right? Just
That's
that
right.
quick reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and much of the work is about that. It's quick reaction. I can end up flying to a scene or something, and meet and get ahead of the team. Depends where I am. So yeah, it's a very useful tool.
I think we'll finish off this segment, and I didn't mention it at the beginning for all our listeners and viewers, but this is going to be a multi-episode podcast here, at least 2, if not 3 episodes with Peter. I think what we'll do is we'll finish off with him just mentioning his the book festival that he was at here, and we'll show the book one more time, and we'll end it there, and then we'll start the next one into our case discussion.
So yeah, I ended up doing the book festivals, Boswell Book Festival in Scotland, the Isle of Wight, Henley Book Festival, Wantage Book Festival, and ended up promoting the book, really. And my publishers were Pan Macmillan, were backing me on the book. I'm just writing another book at the moment, and it's done well. My book went on sale in America last year. It's out on audio, and interestingly enough, it's now been turned into Chinese for the Taiwan market. It's actually been translated into Chinese, and that's a very weird thing, seeing your own book in Chinese. So I've never got any chance of reading it, but I've got the cover. It's all online. Pretty amazing, really. But yeah,
And,
it was a fun journey.
and did you narrate your book?
No, it was an actor called Simon Darwin. Although I do a lot of public speaking, I didn't feel confident narrating my own book. It was Simon spent 5 days in the studio, word perfect. I think the only word he got wrong, he called the deposition site he called it a disposition site instead of a deposition site, and it had already been recorded, so they couldn't go back to it. But apart from that, it was word perfect. He'd done a really good job of it, and I was really pleased. And he can pronounce himself being an actor, so he was excellent.
Thank you for joining Peter and I as we discussed his work in confined space rescue, water recovery, protester removal, flood assistance, and security operations. Peter also shared with us his very important water safety campaign and education initiatives. You can find Peter's book, What Lies Beneath, in print or on audio platforms. In our next discussion, Peter shares how Specialist Group International assists law enforcement with forensic search and recovery. From body recovery to evidence retrieval, Peter gives us an inside look at SGI's participation in criminal investigations, including Scottish serial killer Peter Tobin. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons and check out more great episodes on YouTube at STS Talk. This is a Surviving the Survivor production. I am Douglas MacGregor, and thanks for watching the Geographic Profiler.